All right. If you're a .NET MAUI or any kind of XAML developer, you know that really big fundamental changes to the markup language itself, well, they don't come around very often. So when something pops up that's being called a revolution, you got to pay attention. And honestly, this might just be the single biggest shift in how we write XAML in over a decade.
Just let that quote sink in for a minute. That came directly from the team working on this. I mean, can you imagine it? Your project's completely free of value converters? No more boilerplate, no more creating extra files just to flip a Boolean from true to false?
It sounds almost too good to be true, right? How could we possibly get rid of something that's been so fundamental to XAML data binding for all these years? Well, that is exactly what we are going to break down right now.
So, here's our game plan. First, we'll talk about the pain points we all know and love, or not so much love. Then, we'll dive into this revolutionary solution, C# expressions. We'll see how it says goodbye to converters, enables inline logic, and then, the important part, I'll show you how you can start using it today. We'll wrap up by looking at what this all means for the future of XAML.
Okay, so first, let's set the stage. We really need to understand the friction we've all been dealing with to truly appreciate how great the solution is. And this is all about that boilerplate code that, let's be honest, we've all written more times than we can even count. Oh man, we've all been here, right? You need to hide something when a property is true. So what do? You create yet another invert Boolean converter. You need to enable a button based on two different properties, and suddenly you're wrestling with a super verbose multi-binding and a custom multi-value converter. Or you just need to show price times quantity, and you end up adding a whole new property to your view model just for that one simple calculation. This is exactly the kind of clutter we're talking about. And here it is, the solution. It's called C# expressions in XAML, and it is a complete game changer. It lets you write simple C# logic right there inside your data bindings.
So what does that actually mean in practice? It means you can grab properties, call methods, use logical operators, do math, all right there inside the curly braces of your binding. The XAML compiler is now smart enough to understand it and just handles all the magic for you behind the scenes.
Now, this isn't some black magic. This massive leap forward is actually built on the shoulders of another recent, huge innovation, XAML source generation. You know, the feature that compiles your XAML into C# at build time? Well, that pre-compilation step is what makes all of these new powerful expressions possible. And just to give you a sense of how solid that foundation is, enabling XAML source generation by itself can boost your app's performance by up to 1,000%. Nope, not a typo. 1,000. So this new feature is built on an incredibly fast and solid base. Okay, let's get to the best part. The part where you can actually start deleting files from your projects. We're going to look at the #1 use case for this new feature. Finally getting rid of converters. And this slide says it all. Look at the before. You've got the binding, you're referencing a converter, which you had to define as a static resource, which points to a whole C# class file you had to write. Now look at the after. It's one character, an exclamation mark. That's it. All that other boilerplate, it's just gone. You see, the point here isn't just about writing less code. It means your project has fewer files. Your XAML is so much cleaner because you're not declaring all these resources everywhere, and the logic for the UI is now located right next to the UI element it actually affects, which makes it so much easier to read and understand what's going on. But it gets better. This is about way more than just flipping Booleans. Let's see how this thing handles more powerful inline logic and calculations that before would have just cluttered up your view model.
Remember the old string format syntax? You had to use those single quotes. Remember the zero index? It was always a bit clunky. Well now, you just use the C# string interpolation syntax that we already use every single day. Just a $, and your properties go right inside the curly braces. It's so much more intuitive.
Okay, and this is where it gets really, really amazing. Calculating a total price before, that meant a multi-binding with two separate bindings piped into a custom converter that does the math. You're talking at least 7 lines of XML plus a whole C# file. Now, it is one line. Price times quantity. You can even add formatting right there. This is an absolute game changer. And it's the same story for conditional logic. You want to enable a button only if 2 conditions are met. That used to be, you guessed it, another multi-binding with a converter. Now you just use logical operators right in the binding. Just a small heads up on the syntax. Since this is XML, you have to escape the ampersand, so it's and amp, but the logic itself is perfectly clear and concise.
So by now you're probably thinking, okay, this is awesome. How do I start using it? And the good news is you can. It's available right now as a preview feature, so let's walk through the exact steps you need to take to turn it on.
It's really straightforward. First, you've got to opt into that prerequisite, which is XAML source generation. Then, in your .csproj file, you just add another property to set Enable Preview Features to true. And finally, just make sure your project is targeting a recent .NET 10 service release and you are good to go. Now, here is a very, very important heads up. When you start writing this new syntax, your IDE, whether you're using Visual Studio or VS Code, is probably going to light up like a Christmas tree with red squiggly arrow lines. Do not panic. The tooling just hasn't fully caught up to the compiler yet. As long as you set those flags correctly, your project will build and run perfectly. For now, just ignore the squigglies.
And here's some more great news. This feature was originally planned for .NET 11, which meant a pretty long wait, but the team worked some magic and managed to get it merged early, so it's actually available right now in the service releases for .NET 10. This is why it's behind a preview flag. It's ready to use, but the full tooling experience is still getting polished up.
Okay, so finally, let's zoom out and think about the big picture. What does it change this big really signal about the future of XAML and the philosophy of the whole .NET MAUI team?
You know, there's a really important question that immediately comes to mind for anyone who follows patterns like MVVM. By putting C# directly in our XAML, are we just sliding backwards into the old days of messy code behind, mixing our UI and our logic, and creating something that's impossible to maintain?
And the answer from the dev team is a very clear no. The goal here is super specific. As you can see in this quote, it's all about getting rid of the boilerplate and simplifying view-specific logic, things that are only about how the UI displays data. It is absolutely not about opening the floodgates to let you embed complex business logic in your markup. Think of it as a scalpel, not a sledgehammer.
So we've seen how this one feature can reduce all that boilerplate, seriously increase readability, and just make our lives as developers a whole lot easier. It really is a true evolution for XAML. So I guess the only question left is, with all this new power and simplicity, what incredible user experiences are you going to build next?